Welcome back to the Real Estate 401k Show. I'm your host, Mike Weinstein, alongside Ryan Gerdes. We are still down. Justin, he's really busy.
He's off the map.
He's off the map. You're going to want to text the word danger to 623-AZ-RECON. That's danger to 623-AZ-RECON. You do not have to understand the nuances and the details per se of what happened between the Department of Justice and NAR and the lawsuit, all of that stuff. We've talked about it in previous episodes. You just need, as a home buyer, you need to be familiar with the changes that are rolling out in August and what is going to happen. So one of the biggest changes, we have this document, it's called a buyer-broker agreement. We're expecting a little bit of modifications from it, but the buyer-broker agreement basically is a document that buyers sign, understanding in the event that the seller is not paying your agent a co-broke, you are agreeing to come in with additional funds and pay for your agent.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important that everyone know that this is not a new document.
It's not a new document.
This has been around since the beginning of my career. It was around long before then, because it's a fair question, and you know what? As a consumer, as a buyer, somebody's spending hundreds, if not millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. It's a fair question for you to ask your agent, how are you compensated? How much are you getting compensated, right? And when does that compensation occur? So I love transparency, and it's a conversation that I have with every single one of our clients that we take on from the moment that we sit down, because, you know, I don't want every single client out there. I don't want to represent every single buyer out there. You know why? Because sometimes I just don't agree with them. And that's okay. I'm not, you know, we've talked about it 1,000 times before. We're not everybody's cup of tea. Our approach is very much so towards the wealth management side. Occasionally, we need to put roofs over some people's heads, and so when these things occur, we need to make sure that we are protected. And I mean, again, it's not important that you know all the details of what's happening with this lawsuit, but I truly feel like it has taken a lot of the transparency away.
Yeah.
From the industry.
100%.
Which that part pisses me off, because there's going to be all kinds of backroom, under the table deals going on, because, well, what the DOJ is saying is it's none of the consumer's business, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that. You know, I know what they're saying, but what they're doing is shouting so loudly in our face. It's hard to listen to what they're trying to say, because the policies that they're putting in place is really muddling the transparency of the industry. And so these buyer-broker agreements, if you're working with an agent, they are going to require that here in Arizona, at the very least, or is it?
It's going to be a similar type document in every state. This is a national thing. In Arizona, we happen to just call it the exclusive buyer-broker agreement.
Right.
So in your state, it might be called something different, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. And so in the past, and when I say in the past, leading up to August 17th, this is when the change is really going to affect. As of right now, sellers often pay the buyer's agents a commission to represent the buyer, and that compensation is always included in the MLS. And so we know up front, the buyers know up front, the agents know up front, everybody knows up front that the seller is willing to pay, if the seller is willing to pay a buyer's agent a commission, how much they're willing to pay. The big change is because the Department of Justice has said that the sellers shouldn't have to pay. And so what they've done is now that compensation will no longer be allowed to be included in the MLS. So we won't know if a buyer wants to go look at a house and wants to use this to help them buy a house. At the time that we just see the listing, we won't know if there's any compensation on the table. We would have to literally pick up the phone, call that agent, text them. There's no way to determine that. And so because of that, buyers need to be prepared for the scenario that the seller's not willing to pay the buyer's agent. And then what are you wanting to do? Are you wanting to try to go unrepresented, which Justin and I, over the last the last 3 episodes on our podcast library, we went over the dangers of going up unrepresented. So now with that, buyers have to be prepared to possibly pay for their agent to purchase a home. And then so therefore, that's what the buyer broker document is. The big change again is they're now telling us that a buyer can't even go look at a home without having this buyer broker agreement. And I agree with you. It's supposed to be all about transparency. And this is what I want to talk about. And we want our buyers, we want everybody to text the word danger to 623-AZ-RECON. That's danger to 623-AZ-RECON. Because what we want to do is we want to highlight some of the dangers. In my opinion, the Department of Justice is putting buyers in very precarious situations here, because what's going to happen is a buyer's going to call an agent, call on a sign, maybe walk into an open house. And it is important to note that we don't know for sure. It's doubtful, though you're going to have to sign a buyer-broker agreement when you go visit an open house. But that agent holding the open house might ask you and say, hey, it's required. And so what's going to happen is just to go look at a house with an agent, you're now going to have to sign this buyer-broker agreement. If you say, no, I don't want to put myself in that position, I just want the listing agent to let me in, and I'm going to do a deal with just the listing agent and the seller. That's incredibly bad news.
That's risky, for sure.
That's very risky.
You need to be extremely knowledgeable and savvy if you're gonna go that route. I mean, at the end of the day, what they want to actually happen versus what's going to actually happen in the trenches, I think are going to be two completely different things. What are they going to have, like DOJ police sitting at every open house to make sure that no one walks in there without a signed buyer-broker agreement? No. I mean, people are going to go look at homes. They're going to go to open houses. They're going to call on signs, and agents aren't just going to go over there and start shoveling out all these things, because, like I said earlier on in the episode, I may not want to work with that buyer. Yeah. I may say, you know what, you need to go find different representation if this is how you want to conduct business. So that being said, I think that it's all well and good what they're trying to do over here, but at the end of the day, sellers have never had to pay buyers brokers commissions. That's always just been one of the things that has been tagged along with local MLSs.
I don't agree, because it was a policy of the National Association of Realtors, and this is the policy that got us into trouble, that you cannot, as an agent, you cannot put a listing on the MLS, no matter where it is, no matter what country, without there being some sort.
Okay, you could put a dollar. You could put a dollar. You could put a dollar on there. So,
but as far as the Department of Justice goes, that's the collusion. But it doesn't matter if it's $1 or $10,000.
That was just dictated by the local MLSs, because there was still plenty of exclusive listings out there where they never hit the MLS, but there was a sign out front.
Well, I don't want to go down to the weeds with our listeners on that. I just want them to understand now what they're looking at, what some of the dangers are, why it is so important to have a trusted person that you're working with, why you call that trusted person before you sign anything. And at the end of the day, the buyer-broker agreement is just an employment agreement. It's an employment agreement between a buyer and the listing agent, or the buyer's agent, and their broker. But now the position that buyers are in, one, they're going to be asked to sign documents that they've probably never seen before, they're not familiar with.
And the new document hasn't even come out yet, has it?
Well, it's just going to be revised slightly. But most buyers have never seen it. Right? So now they're going to be asked to go look at a home, sign this document, have no idea what they're signing, and the dangers that it puts them itself into, what they don't realize. The moment that you sign that buyer-broker agreement, whether you've had a long history with that agent, whether you like them, whether you don't like them, you contractually are now tied to that agent. You could just meet an agent, to have no relationship with them, want to go see that house, sign that buyer broker agreement, and now you are tied to that agent. And it's a mutual agreement to cancel that. And so now what happens is buyers may not realize if they sign this document, they go in, they buy the house, they go under contract, seller's not offering any compensation. Some buyers are going to wake up at the closing table and go, wait, I got to pay my buyer's agent extra this because it wasn't explained to me properly.
Or depending on how the buyer broker is written, for me, what I see transpiring on all this is that if you're going to sign one for a specific house, right? So you walk in there, 123 West Main Street, that compensation would be paid in the event you do purchase 123 West Main Street, or there could be a blanket one where whatever you buy, you will be required to pay compensation. So if you're out there looking for a home and you sign one of those, and then you're under the assumption that it's just for that home, and it's actually a blanket one. And then you sign another one with a different agent or at a different open house, and then go sign another one at another open house. You might have 3 of them, 4 of them, however many of them that you signed out there. And then you might have 4 or 5 agents sitting there waiting for payment at the closing table. and unbeknownst to you thought that it was just for that one property. You could have some serious exposure there. So, and these things, they're not in layman's terms. So if you aren't familiar with legal language, or if it's new to you, or it's just kind of above your pay grade or whatever, then you could get in some serious shit fast and end up having to cough up a bunch of cash or getting lawsuits thrown at you, and they could throw liens on the property. They could do all kinds of different stuff. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, and that's the point. And the point of this is be wary of what you sign. Ask questions. Call someone that you trust before you sign anything, and that could be us. And again, text the word danger to 623 AZ Recon. Again, text the word danger to 623 AZ Recon. We can walk you through this document, help you understand what the potential pitfalls are. But you mentioned, which I think is the worst case scenario, whether you sign a buyer broker agreement with multiple agents, or you sign it with just one, but you go out and buy the house without them, you might owe them and you don't realize that you owe them. And this is the thing that irritates me most about the Department of Justice, putting buyers in a bad spot. You could, whether it'll happen or not, you could get sued by that agent because you signed an employment agreement to pay them for services.
And they think that what they're doing is they're educating buyers more. All you're doing is just adding more, mud to the water and more yuck into the industry, because the bad agents out there, the predatory agents out there, are going to use this as ammunition to do more predatory acts. And so on that front, it scares the shit out of me. And quite honestly, the people that they're going to be looking at are first-time home buyers or second-time home buyers. If you've gone through 5 or 6 different transactions, you're probably a little bit more familiar with the language and how the industry works. But if you've never bought a home before, I mean, you already had the chips stacked against you. It's hard to save up for that first down payment. It's hard to understand what all the idiosyncrasies are of buying a home, and then now all of a sudden they're going to throw this really difficult document into the mix that's just going to make the financials even more complicated. It's interesting.
It's interesting. I don't think the Department of Justice, at the end of the day, they're achieving what but it's the government.
Yeah.
No one's shocked.
Some dipshit over there got butthurt about something and said, I got an idea.
Wow, Ryan came back from Italy with a potty mouth. But one of the nuances to it that I do want to clarify for buyers: if you sign a buyer broker agreement, committing to paying X% in the event that the seller's not paying it, you sign it and the seller is willing to pay it or willing to pay a certain percentage of what's on that buyer broker agreement, that reduces the buyer's out of pocket in those situations. So if you sign a buyer broker agreement saying, yeah, I'm willing to pay 3%, but we negotiate the deal in which that's what our focus is going to be on and why it's so important to have someone that's trusted. We're going to try to get that seller to pay for 3%. And if the seller does pay that 3%, then that covers the 3% that you might have
Right.
been
Yeah.
on the hook for.
That'll offset the employment agreement between buyer broker and buyer. So.
All right. Well, there's a lot of changes, and I think the silver lining to this is I think buyers are going to be forced to really take stock in who they're going to engage in, who is going to represent them. I think there's going to be a deeper interview process and a qualifying process, which I think is a great thing. And we would love to begin that process with you. We'd love to help you understand this, help and show you what our strategies are to mitigate your risks. All you got to do is text the word danger to 623 AZ Recon. That's danger to 623 AZ Recon.